that needs to be had. There's a frustration that many who are in high position are not accounting for themselves, and they're worried about their mental health. But they've taken on these positions with the responsibility of having to account at all times, and are no longer prepared to help with the cause of death, with the cause of the system in the disarray that it's at, that has led to what's actually occurred. They want a refocus on their child. They want a refocus on the people that were responsible for their child. They want a refocus on the disarray culminated by the people that were in charge in the line management. They want to refocus on everyone, and you must remember that systems and structures are people. People are responsible for what's happened at Banksia Hill. Banksia Hill and Unit 18, people who were vested with trust to take care of these young ones, and instead there was suffering, there was horror, there was trauma, there was psychological injury, there was physical injury, there was death. These parents long for answers, and they can't be delayed, and now that we've got a fourth tranche, which they're surprised for and by, considering they presume much would be availed to after the first tranche. It's now becoming a year-long process, and it's hurting, it's frustrating, it's a sea of grief, but a mother and father are not hearing from the people that need to be heard from, and they're seeing a system in denial and culpability in terms of accountability not being addressed by everyone, and they do want the former minister and the incumbent minister of corrective services to give account, to be brought to cross-examination, and not just limited to them, but other individuals from the government that had a say or the overarching decision-making in the establishment of Unit 18 and in the failure to provide programs and support that they actually attributed would be the case, that weren't the case, that would have kept their child alive. What they do now is actually Wayne, the father, Nadene, the mother, who brought this child from the sunrise, from the desert, into this world, and their great support person, Megan, to ask questions of them. They prefer questions to be asked.
Yes, Nadene, how are you feeling when the inquest has been going for over a month, 5.5 weeks, longer now, it's in its final days? Do you feel like you're getting enough answers about your son?
Not really. They're just putting us through all this suffering and pain. But yet we gotta get up every day and go to the courts. What about the people that got all the answers and know everything about Unit 18?
How are you feeling? Are you feeling deflated by the whole process?
Sorry?
On the outside for a while, but then
You can.
yeah, you can talk.
So how have you been feeling through this inquest? And have you found any answers at all to?
I just feel not the same, and I feel lost in this world without my son.
He calls him my beautiful boy, my beautiful boy.
What needs to happen in the rest of the inquest? What do you want to say?
I want to see someone get held accountable for doing the wrong things, what they done, and they should have done better, but they didn't. And I just want to see some people get charged.
There's no reason why the Department of Public Prosecutors can't be deliberating at this point in time, and since the Crimes and Corruption Commission and through the tranches of the inquest, when they've been availed to so much information, why they shouldn't be deliberating the procurement of charges. Well, they shouldn't be deliberating the procurement of charges, and if there is grounds, then people should be charged, and we shouldn't be waiting for the culmination of the coroner's inquest. That's something that the family has asked many times over. Something Nadene and Wayne and others in the family have asked many times over, and the answer is, well, they should be deliberating.
Should those people, Wayne, are they the people who opened Unit 18? Are they the people who were running it?
The people who was running it at the time. They know something that we don't know.
What's been the hardest thing to hear during the inquest?
My son's name. It hurts me. I just feel like walking out.
What keeps you there listening?
My baby's mum.
He's been a huge supporter, constant support for Nadene, day in, day out, since he's had the opportunity to do so. Megan.
This has been a really difficult inquest. There's so much racism and discrimination. There hasn't been any Aboriginal people that have actually taken a stand to speak of the injustices and ways forward. There has clearly been Doug Coyne, who was a superintendent at the time. He perjured himself on stand. He gave evidence at the CCC saying that he wasn't aware about this, the cameras being covered, and then he retracted his statement in a coroner's inquest. Therefore, he needs to be chased down and charges need to be applied where possible. The CCC need to be involved, and also Department DPP also need to be involved to ensure that there is charges and there's accountabilities. What we're actually saying is people that are taking a stand, they're all turning on each other. But the reality is, in terms of mental health and people saying that they can't give evidence because of health reasons, what about these fellas' health? This is something that's going to stay with them for the end of days, and this is hurtful. And there's a huge power imbalance that is happening here. Every time that there is a coronial inquest, we have to try and raise funds for the families to come down who are not from Perth, from Meeka, from Kalgoorlie, from Laverton, from all parts of Western Australia to be here. The Department of Corrective Services, once when this first happened with little Cleveland, rest in peace, they ensured that the families came down on planes, and they ensured that there was charter flights. But since the second tranche, there's been no support whatsoever from the Department of Corrective Services. It's like they've pulled back from their responsibilities. This family would not be in Perth had it not been for the coronial inquest, had it not been for their fails with the government, with Department, the Attorney General, the Department of Corrective Services, and hence the people at the staff on the day. So the racism and discrimination certainly has been played out, not only in this court, but also with their lack of care, thought and deliberance in terms of helping these fellas have a fair go. We do want the charges, we do want the accountability, and we want people's head to roll. Christine Gimby, who's a commissioner, Deputy Commissioner for Corrective Services, it is like she's getting some kind of preferential treatment. And we're hearing this yesterday, that she doesn't have to give any more evidence. Well, she was the one calling all the shots. So why is she not giving evidence at something so important as this? She took on the role as a Deputy Commissioner, pulling all the shots. We've seen the little video, which she spoke so proudly about, how this was going to help and support these children into living their best lives when they're on the outside. But we've seen little Cleveland pass as a result. So to my mind, if you want to take a role as a Deputy Commissioner and you want to put your name out in the public domain to say that this is a way forward in terms of youth incarceration about Unit 18, have the guts and the courage to come and stand before the families and say why you made the decision that you did to open this place up. And that is the problem. We know now that this place was opened up, Unit 18, within a 1 week period. The Deputy Commissioner, Andy Beck, he said to ensure that something like this is off the ground, proper planning and consultation needs to happen. It takes 3 months, is the evidence that we've heard.
There's one thing the family said that needs to be taken out, if the media would kindly take it out. They've said our great worry is that we have no trust in the system. We put trust that the Banksia Hill would take care of my child, is what Nadene had said when he was first incarcerated. And I never thought I'd see my child lost in this way. In a couple of days, it's Nadine's birthday. He was effectively lost on her birthday. It had just ticked over past midnight into the day after October 12, so we're approaching 1 year. But what they've said is without accountability, without people speaking freely and openly, without everybody presenting themselves and giving argument or explanations to what had occurred, this is going to be, as has been always of our people, another whitewash of a black death in custody, another whitewash of a black death in custody. But this black death in custody is our son, our lifeblood, our child, the child that we loved. As Wayne says, my beautiful boy. As Nadene says, my special boy. As they both long to see him again, they won't see him again. And it'll be 1 year since what happened, and when he passed in effect in that cell in Unit 18. But the one thing I will say, and I hope this is carried out too, because this is the frustration that Megan Krakouer and myself, Gerry Georgatos, we worked in Banksia for 8 weeks when they needed us, when the quarantine was in place. We changed things from the first day. We de-escalated every potential incident in Banksia to May 22 from March of 2020. In those 8 weeks, there was no conflicts between young ones and guards. The commissioners, Tony Hassel, Kimberly McKay, Cheryl Clay, were over the moon. The kids had rapport and resonance. We did a lot of restorative work. Halved the prison population of the girls in 8 weeks. Halved the prison population of the girls in 8 weeks. Made difference on the outside. But the message I want to say is we had changed the show on the inside. We went in every day to work inside. And we had de-escalated every incident. For us, it breaks our heart that the pain that Wayne and Nadene go through, and please run this, is if they had left us in there to keep on working after they no longer needed us, if they had left us to keep on working in the years to come, young Cleveland Dodd would be here today, would be alive today. The other boy, Will, who's 17 years of age, who died on the inside, in Banksia Hill of all places, when it was touted as if it had changed, which it hasn't. And those lies will haunt the government and everybody in the future to come, as they will indict us in the present for not making the difference that we should have by actually covering their backs in the meantime. But those boys would be alive today. They would be in a good state, as were all the children that we supported in that time. There should be questions asked. The coroner was asked to actually have myself and Megan included in the coroner's inquest as to our time on the inside, making a difference. We weren't availed to that. We are the experts. We are one of many experts, but none of the many experts who have demonstrative work in the field are included in this coroner's inquest. We are having ministers being called. We are having watchdogs being called. We are having carceral personnel, commissioners, director generals, former and present, and line managers being called as if they're experts in the reformative, in the restorative, in the life rehabilitative, when they're not experts in those fields, when they do none of that. They're carceral individuals, they're bureaucrats, they're watchdogs. They're not the individuals that can make a difference. Cleveland would be alive today, and that hasn't been brought to account why we and others like us weren't part of the solutions that would have compelled the social reforms and the type of opportunity that was missed in the lives of these young ones.
Just a quick question for Wayne, if that's all right. During this period of the inquest, we've heard that the government announced their solution, which is obviously to build a new facility, which could take years to complete. Until then, Unit 18 would theoretically still operate. How did it make you feel when you heard that announcement? Investment in infrastructure rather than support?
I just gotta wait. We just gotta wait till they shut that place down and get the other place open for the kids and that. And hopefully it's better than Unit 18. It will be. Because that's not a place for kids in a man's prison. And that's wrong. They shouldn't even be there in Casarina. In the first place, they shouldn't have put them there. Should have just left them in Banksy Hill.
Can I just ask a quick question? So, how would you describe Cleveland? Rest in peace. Some of the happy times that you've had with him.
That's my baby. He's strong. He like me, and he'll always be in my heart forever. Both of us, me and his mum. Nothing in this world will ever take our love away from him and his love from us.
And how has this been for the family or the mob?
He loved all his brothers too, and sisters.
So the last thing that I'll just say, there's been complete and utter devastation right throughout the community, through the hearts, the minds and the souls of mum and dad and all the family, going as anniversaries, buying flowers instead of shoes. People need to be held to account. Triple C need to hold those responsible who has now perjured themselves on the stand. Department of Public Prosecution need to ensure if there's someone that needs to be chased down in terms of wrongdoing, criminal charges need to be laid. There cannot be any power imbalance. It is being whitewashed right now. We haven't seen a black person who has given evidence on the stand at this point. We do know that there's a fourth tranche, and that fourth tranche needs to include prominent Aboriginal people.
It needs to include Megan Krakouer. That needs to be said. Gerry, Georgatos and Nadene and Wayne argue that Megan Krakouer should be included. She has first-hand experience of Banksia Hill. We work with these young kids. She needs to be included. That she hasn't been included is a diabolical disgrace. It is reprehensible and it is actually utterly ridiculous. The fact that she's a firebrand is the sort of person you want on your side, to cover your back, to support you when you need. A firebrand would have blown the whistle, would have got outcomes as she does. The fact that an expert, she's not just an activist and an advocate, she's an expert. The fact that an expert with field expertise who's made a difference has not been called to the stand is just a disgrace. And I argue that myself and other individuals, I can list you a litany of individuals who should have been called to the stand, like Professor Chris Caneen and many others that I won't go into now. They should have been called to the stand. We can't get desktop academics to be the experts. You need the experts, the people that work with the solutions, that have the compelling evidence. But if Megan isn't called into the fourth trance, that's a disgrace. And if the ministers aren't brought to account and let off again, that's a disgrace. And if the experts don't fill this, we have no experts that have been listed that have come across. I will not call any of them experts because they haven't demonstrated the solutions and the work. And unless you have, you're not an expert. You're a researcher.
Wayne, can I just ask you quickly? The former Corrective Services Commissioner said last week that the government didn't care about youth detention. They didn't care about the children, like your son, who were locked up. How does that make you feel?
They gotta care. It's their job to care. Just because they don't work in the place and other people does work in there, they gotta care, because that's wrong. They can't say that. No matter how high they are.
If they cared about your son, do you think things would have been different?
Yup. Not just my son. Cared about all them kids. They shouldn't have put them into Krakouer prison. A lot of them boys. They should have another place for them in Banksia Hill.
That's the most serious thing I've heard today. And if that isn't captured word by word in the media, there's something wrong. And in the end, I know all too well that the government is the face of we don't care. They don't care. If they did care, they would have done something about it. They'll make more commitments now till the election, both sides, and after the election, they'll drop off because they don't care. They are the face of we don't care. That's my first-hand, not second-hand, but first-hand experience with the government, and I've seen this for 25 years.
What does the government need to do tomorrow? What should be the first thing to change?
Change can come imminently. When they talk about it needing 3 months and 6 months, and that's rubbish. I just described change from the first day that Megan Krakouer and Gerry Georgatos went in. Our first de-escalation in March of 2020 was within half an hour of being told we commenced. We didn't even know we were going to commence that day. We were summoned to Banksia Hill by the commissioners. And then they told us, I said, when do we start? They said, now. Can you start now? We started now. In half an hour we had our first de-escalation, and we were walking the compounds and mixing it with the young ones, and that's what we did all along. It can be got right from the beginning, but we've got to look at the solutions that work, and we've got to look beyond our borders to the Nordic examples. And I've talked and written about them profusely, and I've lived them in Acacia Prison, where we reduced suicidality to record low ever, and where we made a difference in Banksia Hill. You've got to work restoratively with these young ones. You've got to have a report on residence, dynamic security, dynamic partnerships. You've got to be authentic. You've got to let them talk and listen and not interrupt them. And you've got to then work to change their lives on the inside to show them potential that they can have on the outside. And then the missing link is to support them post-custody, post-release on the outside, to avoid the dangerous nets that they're in, to avoid the transients, to avoid the vacuum, and to be there for them with 24/7 nurture, which we did and supported many. But we need the funded capability to be invested in all these models of care by whatever service to support them substantively. The solutions are there, and they can be got right from the beginning. It will not take weeks, months or years. Wayne said, don't invest in the infrastructure, invest in the people, invest in supporting them. That's what's got to be invested in the supports and the assists and the transformational, not in the bricks and mortar and the bars and cell doors and the rattling of keys as they all go by. Communal living, it's easy and it's demographical. They're not complex. I'm tired of seeing all these propositions that are adverse to the evidence that's been proven time and again in Norway, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, and when are we going to get it right? If we don't get it right, we're going to have a third, fourth and fifth. And we've had that many close calls that we could have had a dozen deaths in custody in the last 10 years.
And that's true. People need people. It was very simple to provide that love and that care and support to the children when we were in Banksia Hill. And straight away we did de-escalate situations, but we also strengthened the safety nets for people when they were released into the families on the outside. That's all it is. It's about that connectivity. In terms of the Aboriginal, the Black Deaths in Custody report, 1991, the 339 recommendations, the removal of ligature points, that still hasn't been achieved. The Aboriginal Visitor Scheme, which is a recommendation from the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, that's when the children get lonely. That's when the children want to speak and be heard and be validated. As with little Cleveland, rest in peace, he asked for water. He asked to see a nurse. He asked to see an Aboriginal worker. That was not available to him. It makes me sick to the guts when I see some of the people responsible seeing them drink water up on stands, when this little boy, he just needed his water. That's all he wanted. It's cruel. Why is there that power imbalance? So the coronial inquest at the moment is being whitewashed, and there needs to be more Aboriginal people giving evidence, particularly now that there is a fourth tranche, and those people need to have that lived experience, that connectivity in terms of ways forward. Those people, and I'm talking about some of the inspectors and the commissioner saying that this is going to take generational change. Well, I challenge them. What is that generational
Generations
change?
are 20 years. Generations are 20
Change
years.
can happen immediately.
Yeah. I'll finish off on this. And we weren't going to bring this up because we were working at it. Not Nadene and Wayne. Those who care about the future of their families, of the immediate, of Nadene and Wayne, the children, of the siblings of young one lost, just reprehensibly, diabolically. I worked on ex gratia payments for many over the years. The government must step in and do the life transformative for this family and for the siblings of young one. They must step in and do an ex gratia payment, an act of grace payment at the very least. We have lawyers working on this, but compensation should be immediate, and as much of it as possible in the immediate, to buy them homes, to transform their lives, as has happened for others that we've supported to get to that outcome. Compensation should not be delayed. Compensation will go to the heart of keeping this family safer and their children safer, the siblings of young ones safer. Compensation must be immediate and must be in the multi-millions. Mr. Ward's, which I worked on, was 3 million plus for the family of Mr. Ward. It is obvious that we shouldn't have lost someone, but we cannot strand these people. They come here with little in their pockets to fight for the justice of their young one lost. And Megan and I have had to raise $80,000 for the 3 tranches to support the families. And it should be the Department of Justice that pays for that. Should be the Department of Justice that pays for that, as it did when they brought the family, when all this was happening, as though it was a shock to the system and a blow to their reputation that they had lost young one. Well, they've lost another one since. But they should take on responsibility and bring this family to hear what needs to be heard in person and be part of the process and go the ways forward. But I call on the West Australian government on behalf of Nadene and Wayne and the siblings of young one, that they should be compensated without delay in the days and weeks ahead. And even if it's a significant proportion of what they could get and should get, but they should not be delayed. If they can get all of it now, all the better. That's the least of what they can do. And it cannot be an argument of the proper processes. It has been brought forward by acts of grace and by ex gratia on numerous occasions that I can cite, including Mr. Ward and Miss Dew. The family should be supported financially and should not be taken for granted and should not be left penniless struggling at this time. When they're every last cent, they come here without a dime in their pocket, without a nickel, without a penny. And that shouldn't have been the case. And it shouldn't have come down to Megan, Krakouer and myself to raise $80,000 for these families, to spend on accommodation, to spend on transport and to spend on food when these things should have been provided by the Department of Justice. But what should have happened was we should not be in this predicament at all. And that accountability needs to be taken. They did wrong. They need to now compensate and they need to make that the least of what they can do.
Did you want to have the final word?
I just want justice for my son and someone to get punished
No,
the
we'll see.
right way.
Okay.